Recording in progress.
Hi there, my name is Everett Morris, and as part of Music 211, I present to you my final project, Organs of Battle Creek and Marshall. And we are going to start off with St. Philip Catholic Church. I was born and raised here and baptized here, spent a long time working in various ministries in this church. The one longest that I worked in was the music ministry. I was very well acquainted with this organ, and I have a soft spot in my heart for it. Can I say it's probably my favorite? It is a 1929 E.M. Skinner, model Opus 787. It has 3 manuals, 30 stops, 28 ranks of pipes, which include 1,883 pipes in total. We are going to talk a little briefly about the mechanicals. So above each keyboard, there are these little pistons. Those are presets set up by Skinner. If you were to actually hit one of those buttons, it would automatically move a set of stops. And however they, quote, programmed it, but it's all mechanical. So you can operate each stop individually or run a preset arrangement with the pistons. You have all these different voices up here you can make, and those are everything from blends, couplers. Now, what a coupler does, you can actually couple the top keyboard to the bass pedal, and as you work the keyboard up here, it actually plays the piping from the pedal. So if you can't see your feet, you can always run the bass up here and still hit those bass pipes, which is absolutely amazing. So that's just the general overview of the mechanicals. Originally, it was put into the church in 1929 when this one was built. W.K. Kellogg actually paid for half of this organ to be put in. He was a very strong supporter, big fan of the E.M. Skinner. He went with Skinner in the W.K. Kellogg Auditorium. He bought one for his wife and had it installed in the Gull Lake house, which would have been really, really nice to see. But I didn't want to make this whole presentation just on Skinners. But they just happen to be the most proliferous in Battle Creek. In 1991, the whole system was completely restored. A bunch of the pipes were not replaced, but taken all down and cleaned, retuned, put back into place. So a large portion of the piping is original. The organ is original, but obviously been restored. And yeah, now if we had cell phones back in 91, I'm sure there would have been footage of the rededication ceremony. It was absolutely beautiful. I was there. Loved it. They played very subtle songs, and then, of course, they had to open the whole thing wide up, which was just mind-blowing and goosebumpy. In this picture, these are your sections for your pedals, as you can tell by the size of the pipes. These are all your bass pedal piping. Very large, very big. What's really great now, there are 16-foot and 8-foot pipes in this system. How do they get a 16-foot pipe in such a small area? They actually bend them up and down depending on the angles. And so they may only be 8 foot, but the piping actually go down another 8 foot, which makes it a 16-foot pipe. And the great thing about air is it'll go everywhere. So it has the 16-foot pedals, 8-foot first and second diapason sections, 4-foot octave pedals, or pipes rather, and a grave mixture of 122 pipes. And what that is that's basically a blending of various sections from various stops. It's not specifically a diapason or an octave. It's a blending of various piping. So kind of a mishmash, if you will. In this picture is actually the piping within the swell section, and it's a blend of your swell and choir, all the way down to these tiny little pipes, and all the way up to these just beautifully big ones. All these pipes have been cleaned, restored over time, and they are part of the original organ. This system here on your right is part of the harp. What's really great about these, you'll see the air feed here, it goes right to these little bellows, and as you hit that key, that bellow opens momentarily and sends a mechanic section up here and actually plucks the string. So it's absolutely phenomenal. These are all the pipes in the choir section. The concert flute, and it sounds exactly as you would imagine. It just sounds identical to a flute. The cello section is more of that particular range or voicing, but you can tell it's piping. But of course, it has a very cello-y tone to it. And all these others are just absolutely beautiful in their tones. I got to be honest with you, to describe it, I can't put it into words, but they're very mellow. Some are a little bit more high pitched, some are a little bit more mid-low pitched as far as the voicing. And then you have that harp section, which is absolutely, when it's working, it sounds absolutely glorious. Right now it is under maintenance. In this image, we've got the swell section, as you can tell by the louvers. Now, with the swell section, it's operated with a pedal above the bass pedals, and you can actually open and close these louvers, which of course make it louder or quieter, louder or quieter, depending on how you want it. And these are all the pipes within the swell section. Now, the way that these pipes are arranged in St. Phil, the swell pipes are directly behind here, but the grate pipes, you can actually see them down here. They are kind of intermixed all within the same corner of the building. This is Omar Padilla. He is the music director at St. Phil, and he was very gracious enough to give me a grand tour and try to fill my head with so much information. But he did play me a sample of this organ in its grandeur, and let's hear that.
I played a piece. Let me see if I can remember.
Yep, it gave me goosebumps again. And I just moved the mouse in the wrong way. All right. Next on is St. Thomas Episcopal, which if you live in Battle Creek, you'll know is right across the street. This church has a 1929 E.M. Skinner Opus 788. It is smaller. It's only got 2 manuals, or the keyboards. It's only got 16 ranks and 1,067 pipes. So it's about 800 less than St. Phil, but that's okay. It does an amazing job for this room. Originally cost $10,260 back in 1929, which is really impressive considering this is the peak of the Depression. W.K. Kellogg actually paid for the swell section of this particular church and organ, and he was able to contribute quite nicely. It definitely came in handy. Yes, so the great organ section is directly behind these pipes, and these pipes don't do anything. They are a facade. A number of churches did this as a matter of decoration, and it was, to try to imply the grandeur of the organ, but they were never functional. They just looked beautiful, which is all that matters. With these here, we've got the 6-foot board-on for the pedals. Notice it doesn't have an 8 or a 16 foot. So the pedals are not as low or loud, depending on your definition, but they definitely do an amazing job. 73 8-foot diapason, so it's only got 1 diapason section versus St. Phil, which has 2. And these others are your standard piping for whatever piece you're going to play. If you're walking in and hearing an organ, you're going to hear the diapason and the voix celeste and the octave and the flutes. Those are your most common. Over here, here's another close-up of the facade. In the echo organ, which is actually a section behind all this, it has 61 8-foot chimney flute and 61 vox humana, which in our sample you'll actually hear those particular pipes played. The tremolo, which you can add, it almost gives that very human-like quality to the sound. And 25 tubes of chimes. Over here in this picture, we have all the piping that is behind the swell section, as you can tell by the louvers. The wood pipes are your lower, more, what do you want to call it, woodwind type instruments sounding. And over here are all your regular metal pipes. These include your diapason and your voix celeste and your flutes. And your the oboe section would be more the wood piping. In the pedal section, it does have a 16-foot diapason for the pedals and a 16-foot board-on for the pedals. Now with the octave and the gedect, you can actually add higher notes to the pedal to where you can actually create almost 3 tones, 4 tones per pedal. It makes it sound way bigger and way more imposing, which is absolutely beautiful. This is Brooks Grantier. He is a local historian and an organ expert. The stories that he told me, I wish I could have actually incorporated all of those. There's a lot of stories. He did inform me that the W.K. Kellogg Auditorium and the Kellogg House at Gull Lake both have E.M. Skinners. He had actually bought that E.M. Skinner for his wife. W.K. Kellogg did. And he also informed me of another church, which we're going to discover here momentarily. But we'll let him play a sample.
And you want something pretty big sounding. You look at something like this.
And just beautiful. Next up is the First Presbyterian Church. Now this one is a bit of an interesting mix. It all started out as a 1928 EM Skinner, but it's not. As you can tell by the organ, that looks totally different. Over the years, from the 60s on, there's a great deal of maintenance and upkeep, removal and replacement of parts. But in the end, it started out as an Opus 720, and then it turned into a Dobson. Well, and that's a good thing, specifically for this church. So altogether, there's 2,147 pipes, 33 ranks. It originally cost $21,875, quite a bit more than the $10,000 at St. Thomas. Back in 1928, it was just no expense was spared on this machine. Over the years, and it all started in the 50s, things kind of started falling into disrepair. And so they had to have a bunch of pipes changed out. They brought in the Dobson console in the 60s, and in 1979 the whole system was rebuilt by George Price, and that's where a lot of pipes were removed, a lot of the Skinner elements were gone, and all that's left of the Skinner is about 4 to 6 ranks of pipes and a section of clarinet pipes. The rest of it has all been changed out. So there's nothing original, minus those few pipes. There's nothing original of the Skinner in this church. But as a Dobson, it's an absolutely glorious machine. Yes, so this covers all the various changes over the years. So in the 50s, pipes were removed, and they were actually replaced from a salvaged Johnson organ. Cassavant came in the 60s, the same company that restored St. Phil's organ, and added a great mixture, which is a blending of various voices within the great organ. So they actually added voicing and replaced the entire choir section. So none of the choir piping is original. And yeah, like I said, few original Skinner clarinet pipes, and that's it. Once the console was replaced, they added the wind chests and other pipes were replaced. Now, what was really great about the Dobson console is, unlike a Skinner, it is an electrical mechanism versus the mechanical that the Skinners are. They are stationary and the organ stays in one place. With the Dobson, it can actually be moved around in the church depending on how long the cables are. That is literally its only restriction. So, yes, this is the Dobson console in its glory. Yeah, you'll notice that the stops are laid out a little differently. Still has the rank buttons there. That also controls blends and coupling. And then down here at the very bottom are your stops for your pedals and various other settings. And this is Carl Witt. He is the organist there at First Presbyterian. Just an absolute gem of a guy. And he was able to give me quite a bit of time with him and this organ. And we'll play a sample of what he was able to do. Sorry for that. And last but not least, St. Mary Catholic Church in Marshall. Now, this one was one that was told to me by Brooks Grantier, one that I absolutely had to go check out. So I did. And this thing is absolutely beautiful. But it's a different kind of organ. There isn't a single pipe in the mix. It is all electric. It looks like a pipe organ. It plays like a pipe organ, but it is not a pipe organ. It is completely digital. It has even different organ modeling voices in there to where you can actually more or less change the organ that you are playing. Now, in this next slide, we see a little bit of the electric control or the digital stuffs. We still have stops. In fact, the casing almost looks like a Skinner in itself. It's very similar. But with this one, I really have no specifications other than it has a whole bunch of presets, a bunch of pistons, and 3 manuals, because there are no pipes to this thing. But we're going to let Tim Shoemaker of the church explain some of the features.
The color's is a little bit different on each one. So for example, this is just a fun feature. So I can have this sound here. Actually take one that's modeled after, say, that. We'll do the Schlicker. This is a different type of organ builder. So I follow the same stops, but they're different sounds now. Or I can go with the French modeled one they call the Cavaille Cole. And now my reeds are going to be really big and bright.
Yep, completely different. And there we go. So Tim was also able to play for me a full sample of a song, demonstrating a lot of its features, including bells or chimes. And it's absolutely beautiful. Now, in the last shot, I panned up on each side of the choir loft. You guessed it. Those are speakers. These things are just absolutely insane. How they were able to get the proper speakers, and I'm sure they brought in some real professionals, people that know a lot more about that than I do, but they really, really nailed it in person. My phone cannot do this organ justice, but we'll play a sample. Yes, that was an electric organ. Absolutely beautiful. Well, in the end, I want to give great thanks to Omar Padilla. He's the musical director of St. Philip. Brooks Grantier, organ and local historian. Charles Grantier of St. Thomas Episcopal Church. Carl Witt of First Presbyterian Church. And Tim Shoemaker of St. Mary's Catholic Church. And on the next slide, I've got some links, and these are where I got most of my information, what wasn't given to me by the gentleman, from Dobson, Oregon, regarding the First Presbyterian, OregonHistoricalSociety.org, and PipeOrganDatabase.org. Both of these have information on the EM Skinners that I had seen, plus many, many more, over, 81,000 different organs. Just an absolute dream to cover this topic. So, hopefully you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I thank you so very much for your time and have a great day.